a great series. And so nice to see all of you here. We are excited today to have Elizabeth Ogren Erickson with us. She is a great friend of the La Quinta Museum. We always appreciate her, and she has spoken in person at the museum, but today we're doing it on Zoom. We feel like we can't find a better cheerleader for the desert that we all love. And so we were very anxious for her to share a little bit about a project she's been working on with 4 friends called Cactus to Cloud. Elizabeth and her teammates, Colin Barrows, Cindy, correct?
Cindy,
Tracy
right.
Bartlett and Cindy Barrows are all a part of Cactus to Cloud. They together became certified naturalists and climate stewards. And so they now have this project that they're going to share with us today. And so I'd like to, well, before we start, Elizabeth, everybody, just as a little bit of housekeeping rules, we find it works best if everyone stays muted, maybe cameras off during the lecture. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. We'll have a Q&A after the presentation. So throw those in the chat, or you'll be able to raise your hand and wave and turn your camera on once we're in the Q&A. So, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth for The Desert is Not Deserted.
Thank you, Charla, so much for inviting me to speak. Welcome, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Ogren Erickson, and I am a dental hygienist. You may be wondering, why is a dental hygienist speaking with us about the desert? Well, I am on the learning curve for life. After a tremendous career in an implant and general dentistry practice in Madison, Wisconsin, my spouse, who is a dentist, and I were looking for new adventures, new challenges, and new learning experiences. We spent 15 years looking at different communities throughout the United States, and we finally found it all here in the Coachella Valley. No sleet, no snow, and no ice. Instead, we found sunshine, blue skies, excellent adult education, and amazing natural spaces to explore. We sold our home in Maple Bluff and moved to La Quinta in 2016, completely unaware of the fact that we were moving to a global biodiversity hotspot. What did you think of the desert when you first moved to the Coachella Valley? Did you think of it as, quote, a dry, barren area of land, especially one covered with sand that is characteristically desolate, waterless, and without vegetation, which is the Oxford Dictionary definition of the desert? And yet Bob and I love living in the desert. Biking and hiking and searching for plants, especially flowering ones, and critters. So much so that we participated in the inaugural University of California Desert Sands and Sky Islands California Naturalist training in 2018 and UC's inaugural Climate Stewards training in 2020. Therefore, we learned the naturalist definition of a desert as an ecosystem that receives less than 250 millimeters, in other words, 10 inches of rain per year, and yet is inhabited by resilient plants and animals with unique adaptations for survival in extreme temperatures and drought conditions. Therefore, as a certified California naturalist and a climate steward, I welcome you to our virtual presentation. The desert is not deserted. The desert is a place full of life, from cactus to cloud and everything in between. First, I would like to acknowledge that I am on the traditional territory of Kuya, and Kuya live in the Coachella Valley at this time. Did you know that all of us who live in the Coachella Valley live in one of the most biologically diverse areas of the entire world? And yet, what accounts for that biodiversity? Our presentation will provide insight to answer that question And we will share information about Cactus to Cloud, and a group of environmental advocates whose mission is to expand people's understanding that the desert is a place full of life. The desert is not deserted. Our presentation will take approximately 25 minutes. And as Charlotte mentioned, you're welcome to use the chat box to enter your questions. And our Cactus to Cloud team, all of whom are certified California naturalists and climate stewards, will be happy to answer your questions at the end of the presentation. Let's begin. I love this satellite image of the Coachella Valley. It's a great depiction of why we are where we are and what makes the Coachella Valley so special. On the left side of this image is a wall of mountains that extends 1,276 miles, all the way from the Sierra Nevadas down to Baja California. And these mountains have a very dramatic effect. They prevent rains off the Pacific Ocean from reaching the Coachella Valley. Land to the east of the mountains is a cornucopia of beiges. To quote California naturalist Colin Barrows, there is a perception that some people may have of the desert as a dry and desolate place as compared to the green on the coast. In many ways, though, the desert is full of life, lushness, and greenery. You have to get to know the desert first before it reveals itself to you. End of quote. And you may be surprised to learn that there is a lot of diversity. By that I mean variety in those beiges, which is a very important reason for protecting natural lands in the Coachella Valley, including the plants and the animals. You may be wondering, why is the diversity of land important? It is important because different plants and different animals are specific to different natural lands. If you take a map of North America and plot out where all the various species of plants and animals exist, you find a huge orange biodiversity hotspot over the Coachella Valley. We happen to live in a very special place where we have plants and animals that live only in the Coachella Valley and no place else on Earth. In comparison, throughout most of North America, you find large numbers of the same species. For instance, large numbers of sugar maples or large numbers of white-tailed deer that are found throughout most of North America. However, in the Coachella Valley, you find large numbers of diverse, in other words, different species that are found only in the Coachella Valley, including the federally endangered peninsular bighorn sheep. This biological diversity is partially due to the elevational diversity of the Coachella Valley. Amazingly, and this is something that's truly amazing, all 5 life zones are present in the Coachella Valley. You may be thinking, why is that important? It is important because different plants grow at different elevations depending on factors such as precipitation, sunlight, and temperature. Biological diversity of the Coachella Valley is due in part to the elevational diversity of the valley. Amazingly, and this is something that's truly amazing, all 5 life zones are present in the Coachella Valley. You may wonder, why is that important? It is important because different plants grow at different elevations, depending on factors such as precipitation, sunlight, and temperature. For example, is it a plant that grows at an elevation where the annual precipitation is 4 inches per year? And yes, I spoke correctly, only 4 inches per year. Or is it 40 inches per year, 10 times as much precipitation? How intense are the sun's ultraviolet rays? Is there any cloud cover to disperse the intensity of the UV radiation? Does it have to survive temperatures that approach 130 degrees Fahrenheit on the desert floor in the summertime? Or does it have to survive both? and different animals feed on different plants at different elevations. Right now, I am in the lower Sonoran Desert. Elevation from below sea level to 2,000 feet above sea level. It is home to the desert ecosystem. Continuing up in elevation, the second life zone is the upper Sonoran Desert. Elevation 2,000 to 4,000 feet above sea level. This is where you find the native California fan palm. Did you know that this is the only palm native to the Western United States? All of the other palms, whether it's a date palm, queen palm, royal palm, were imported from someplace in the world once upon a time. The third life zone is the transitional zone, where you find pinyon pines, juniper woodlands, and agave, which is an important food source for the Native American Kuya. For those who have visited Kuya-Tewanet Vista Point on Highway 74, that is in the transitional zone. And for those of you who have yet to visit, it will be worth every minute and every mile you spend traveling to get there. The interpretive signage that was created by BLM interpretive specialist Tracy Albrecht, that signage is excellent. The fourth life zone is the boreal zone of yellow pines and other coniferous forests, elevation 6,000 to 8,000 feet above sea level. And way up at the top, above the clouds, is the fifth life zone, the Alpine Zone, which is a very harsh environment, and yet plants such as San Jacinto lupin, and animals such as the southern sagebrush lizard and violet green swallow manage to survive. For those of you who are looking at these photographs and thinking, who took these amazing photographs? The photographer is California naturalist Colin Barrows. Next, let's look at the boundary of the Coachella Valley and the important natural lands that lie within the Coachella Valley, starting with the southern border of Joshua Tree National Park. Yes, we have Joshua trees in the Coachella Valley and amazing wildflowers. One of my most favorite places to look for wildflowers in March is Cottonwood Canyon, which is off Cottonwood Springs Road near the southeastern entrance to Joshua Tree National Park, exit 168 off the 10. Next, Salton Sea State Recreation Area, which is an important flyway for over 450 species of migratory birds, including the American white pelican. Have you seen them? They're like the most amazing symphony in the sky, in the sky as they swoop and soar. Next, Santa Rosa and San Jacinto Mountains National Monument. Our national monument is a landscape monument encompassing over 280,000 acres of state, federal, tribal, and private lands that are preserved and protected into perpetuity. The National Monument was created in the year 2000 by an act of Congress, and it stretches all the way from Mount San Jacinto, which we can see from our house, 10,834 feet above sea level, to the western shore of the Salton Sea at 236 feet below sea level. It's an amazing national monument because of its elevational diversity and also because of what it protects, including the federally endangered peninsular bighorn sheep and the federally threatened desert tortoise. Many of you have probably hiked lower Carrizo Canyon. My favorite place to hike in the National Monument is upper Carrizo Canyon. It is open October 1st through December 31st. It is closed now for the birthing of the peninsular bighorn sheep lambs. So mark your calendar for December 2021 when the rattlers are asleep. and go explore Upper Carrizo Canyon. For me, I feel like I'm in a different world as I hike through the narrow leaf willows to get to the native California fan palm oasis. Next is our newest national monument, Santa Snow National Monument, which creates an important corridor and habitat for species movement from the Santa Rosa Mountains, which are south of the 10, to the San Bernardino Mountains north of the 10. Did you know that there is a wildlife corridor underneath the 10? There is. It is near Snow Creek Road, where the Pacific Crest Trail passes underneath the 10. My most favorite place in Santa Snow in March is Whitewater Canyon Preserve, when the golden yellow Encilia farinosa, such a beautiful botanical name, or brittle bush are flowering and cascading down the mountainside. It is stunningly beautiful. And for those of you who have yet to visit Whitewater Canyon Preserve, this is another place that will be worth every minute and every mile you spend traveling to get there. Next, Coachella Valley Preserve, where pristine native sand dunes still remain in the Coachella Valley. This is where you find the desert sand dune ecosystem, including the federally threatened Coachella Valley milkvetch and the California endangered Coachella Valley fringe-toed lizard, both of which are endemic to, in other words, found only in the Coachella Valley and no place else on Earth. No place else in California, no place else in North America, no place else in the world, only here in the Coachella Valley. And if you're looking for an easy hike to explore a native California fan palm grove along an active strand of the San Andreas Fault, I suggest Willis Palms Oasis. Look at those views, Mount San Jacinto and San Gorgonio. Next, Mackay Hills Wilderness, where the San Andreas Fault is actually located. If you are wanting to explore the uplifting that occurs as a result of the Pacific tectonic plate that stretches all the way to Indonesia, moving along the North American tectonic plate that stretches all the way to Iceland, Painted Canyon is a special place to explore. Next, Mackay Hills Wilderness. Next, Orocopio Mountains Wilderness, where the astronauts trained for the Apollo lunar landing, in other words, the moon landing that was in 1969. This is where you found Orocopia sage or lavender sage, which is a California rare plant that is endemic to the Orocopia Mountains. And this is a plant that I hope to see someday. Next, Santa Rosa Wilderness, which protects the largest concentration of peninsular bighorn sheep in the United States. The east end of the Buhaw Trail is my most favorite place to explore in the Santa Rosa Wilderness, and yet there are so many wonderful places to explore in the Santa Rosa Wilderness. This is where I was checking out teddy bear cholla, and I admit I was looking for a bug, and I happened to find a Narnia, which is a genus of leaf-footed bug amongst the spines. And you may have heard the saying, there is no joya in a cholla. Can you imagine this? Ouch. And my Cactus to Cloud California Naturalist teammate, Tracy Bartlett, found a chakwala. For us, that's majorly exciting. And Mount San Jacinto State Park, where the top of the tram is located. Did you know that the northeast escarpment, and escarpment is a steep slope, is actually the steepest rise in the United States? This is the view that John Muir termed the most sublime spectacle to be found anywhere on this earth, end of quote. A special place to explore is Hidden Lake, which is actually a montane, in other words, mountainous vernal pool. that may be filled with a shallow amount of water in winter and spring, and yet completely dry in the summer and the fall. This is where you find hidden lake blue curls, a California rare alpine wildflower that is endemic to, in other words, found only at Hidden Lake and no other spot on the entire earth. This little charmer flowers in July and August, and this is on my dream list to see. As special as the Coachella Valley is, unfortunately, there are threats to our desert life, including the climate crisis. Climate change is scientifically real and it's here. One example is drought. In the state of California, the longest lasting period of drought since the year 2000 began December 27th, 2011, and ended on March 5th, 2019. One simple solution to mitigate the effects of climate change is to remove turf grass lawns and replace them instead with native desert landscaping or low water landscaping. Did you know that 1 square foot of turf grass on average requires 73 gallons of water per year? Whereas 1 square foot of desert landscaping on average requires 17.2, that's 17.2 gallons of water on a yearly basis. In other words, turf grass requires 4.24 times as much water as what a desert landscaping does. Remember that water is a finite resource. Even with our aquifers in the Coachella Valley, water is not infinite. Dumping is disrespect, plain and simple. Disrespect of the land and disrespect of the landowner. Let's start a campaign together to discourage dumping and teach it in elementary, middle school, high school, and adult education curriculum so that we can bike or drive along our rural farm roads, enjoying our stunning mountain views without seeing items dumped along the side of the road. Trash. Let's practice the principles of leave no trace. Pack it in, pack it out, instead of leaving shell casings and poop bags along our trails. I have yet to see a poop bag grow legs, walk itself over, and deposit itself into a trash container. Leave what you find, especially if it's a native plant, and yet feel free to remove a non-native invasive plant like Saharan mustard, which outcompetes this beautiful lupin. Respect wildlife. Remember that we are hiking in their home. And be considerate and inclusive of others so that everyone feels safe hiking on our trails. Enough about threats to our desert. Instead, let's be part of the solution. Therefore, I'd like to share information about Cactus to Cloud. We are a group of environmental activists who challenge the assumption that the desert is deserted. Our mission is to increase people's understanding that the desert is a place full of life. Our goal is to get people out and about in the desert, to wonder about what they see, to teach people the tools to learn about the desert, such as iNaturalist, and to involve them as community scientists. All of these are ways that all of us can help keep our desert amazing. You may be surprised to learn that my most favorite pandemic distraction was the Wild Coachella Challenge Bio Blitz on iNaturalist in March 2020. For my mental, emotional, and physical well-being, it was the best way to get me out and about in nature, exploring our amazing outdoor spaces, and documenting the plants and animals that exist in the Coachella Valley. You may wonder, what is a Bio Blitz? A Bio Blitz is biological surveying in a specified time period to count the number of plants and animals that exist in a specified space, such as your neighborhood or your city, a nature preserve, the Coachella Valley, or the Santa Rosa and San Jacinto Mountains National Monument. A Bio Blitz can be for a time period for as short as 24 hours, 3 days, a week, or a month. Scientists, naturalists, community scientists, and volunteers use their cell phone to take photographs which they post on an application such as iNaturalist. The goal of a Bio Blitz is to get people, all of us, interested in the biological diversity of the areas where we live, work, and play. It's easy, it's fun, and it's a great learning experience. In conclusion, I invite you and your siblings, and these are my siblings and my nephew, your children, your grands, your nieces and nephews, your friends and your neighbors, to learn more about the wonders of our desert by joining us on Cactus to Cloud. Subscribing to our Cactus to Cloud YouTube channel and following us on Instagram. Remember, the desert is a place full of life, and it's up to all of us to keep our desert amazing. Enroll in California Naturalist training. This is our class. The University of California Desert Sands and Sky Islands California Naturalist Training 2020, the inaugural class, 2018, thank you. Contribute your findings to iNaturalist, leave no trace. We'll see you on the trails. Thank you, and special thanks to Charla Barron Fox, La Quinta Museum, the Gem of the Desert, for inviting me to speak. Thank you.